Okay. Hi, guys. Welcome to tonight's live chat. I had such a hard time getting on here tonight, guys. Forgive me. I did a lot of running around today. And by the time I got to the turnpike, the freeway, I was gridlocked in traffic. So it took me a while to get here, but I'm glad to see you guys. And hopefully we can have a good conversation before 8:30. So I'm hoping to wrap up by 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. Let me check on Instagram because it's acting wonky again. Let me put in the links and then we're going to go ahead and get started in this conversation because I know you guys want to know. You want to know wait, hold on. Let me do this. I have two things I need to do. Bear with me, guys. You guys are going to want to know, how do you deal with a sibling who is a sociopath or a psychopath or has antisocial personality disorder? It's hard to deal with them. It's hard to meet them halfway in things. It is hard to believe them because they often lie. It's also very hard to grow up in a household with them because they often win the favoritism. They win the favoritism of parents. And they do that because they are manipulative. They are controlling, dominating. And a lot of parents do not have the skills. They're not equipped to manage and deal with a sociopathic or psychopathic child. So what ends up happening is the parent either gives in, finds some kind of common ground with that child, or fights emotionally and psychologically to keep a close relationship with that child. And what happens in that process, we're going to talk more about it tonight, a little bit later. What happens in that process is you often, as the sibling, if you have a sibling like this, somehow you kind of get pushed to the side, right? Or hold on, guys, this is not working out. What is going on with Instagram? You either get pushed to the side, you become ignored in that dynamic, that family dynamic. Hold on, guys, I gotta go back and put Instagram in here. Or you may find yourself feeling very duped by your sibling, by your parent. You know, when there's a sociopathic or psychological sibling, you're going to deal with a variety of behaviors that has nothing to do with you. They often have legal challenges. They often have relational challenges. They often have issues in school. They have issues with adults of all kinds. The sibling who is a psychopath and a sociopath, it is really hard to say, you know what? I want to be your friend. I want you to be a part of my life. I want you to be a part of my children's life. So be an aunt or an uncle. I want you to, be a loving sibling of mine that we can, share things with each other and we can talk to each other and we can have a healthy relationship. You most likely have felt that way. But when it comes to having a psychopathic or a sociopathic sibling, they don't really have that same emotional awareness like you do, or like we think they should have. They also don't have those desires deep down in their heart like we do. So you may be going along believing that, my sister wants to be close to me, my sister wants to be close to my children, or my brother really loves me, and we're going to have a happy family and life is going to be great. That's in your mind, that's in your heart. You desire that, right? But your sibling on the other side may not see you in those same lens. The sociopathic or psychopathic sibling may see you as competition. They may see you as a big burden in their life. You're in the way. They just want to get rid of you. They just want to push you to the side, right? You may also notice in these kind of siblings that they don't seem to be very humble. They don't want to show their weaknesses. They want to remain on the top of you, right? Above you as much as they can. And that means not showing emotion, not coming to the events that you invite them to, not committing to being your sibling. They are quite emotionally distant, according to research, and kind of cold and callous. So we're going to get into that. But what's sad is we often think, I have a sibling, so we're going to be great. Not necessarily. And it can start very, very young. it can it can literally start, guys, and I find this kind of hilarious in some ways, because a lot of people ask the question, including a recent client of mine. She says, can a child be a sociopath? My quick answer was yes. Then I pulled it back a little bit and I said, well, let me break that down so that you don't go around thinking children can be born sociopaths. Here's what happens. A parent's parenting style, the child's genetic makeup, the culture that the child is around as they develop over time, in addition to learned behavior, yes, a child can become a sociopath over time. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to demonstrate this on paper for you just so you can see the connections. But I'm also going to break it down. But I remember saying to my client, I don't want you going around saying kids can be sociopaths, but they can learn a series of behaviors and tactics. They can engage in a variety of behaviors that are criminal, sneaky, and deceitful. And they can also be kind of, what's the word? Cloned, if you will, cloned. If a parent is a sociopath, imagine what that child could be if the parent who's a sociopath is teaching intentionally or unintentionally the child, right? They're going to learn some ways of thinking, some behaviors, some disposition and attitudes that are not healthy. And so in that vein, in that sense, yes, a child can be a sociopath, but it takes a variety of things to contribute to that. Having a sibling like this is very depressing, right? You want to consider, as we go along in tonight's live chat, you want to consider that the role of dominance is significant here, because a sibling who is a sociopath or a psychopath, which I'm going to break this down for you in just a little bit, they often have this internalized natural desire to be above. And that means I am going to be above at all costs. I'm going to throw tantrums when I'm not above and I don't get my way. I'm going to dominate you and control you when I don't get my way or when I feel you're a threat to me. I'm going to control mom and dad's heart and mind about me. And then I'm going to see to it that you don't have any opportunity as my sibling to get ahead of me, to be liked or favored. I'm going to step on your toes every chance I get. And it may or may not look that way, because I may or may not have the desire to show my whole hand to you. There are some siblings who will step on your toes, but they won't do it in a way that you can see it. They're going to do it behind the scenes, and they know how to get that going. They know how to manipulate other people around you to get what it is that they want and to get over on you. And you hate to, I hate to throw this out there, and you hate to kind of believe that this is how siblings can be, but this is exactly how they can be. And it's an ugly thing. They don't have a humility about their nature. They don't have love and compassion about their nature. And they most certainly are not empathic. They are not cognitively empathic, and they are not effectively empathic. Now, you guys, if you've been with me for a pretty long time, you know what I mean when I say cognitive empathy. It's this ability to logically and rationally identify what somebody else may be feeling, or what they're thinking, or what's going through their mind, or how they're managing a very tough situation. That's cognitive empathy. I can actually process in my mind what you're going through. Affective empathy is I can feel and sense what you're going through, and my heart aches for you. Okay. Siblings who have sociopathic or psychopathic traits, they don't have effective empathy, and they most certainly don't have cognitive empathy, because guess who fills their mind all the time? Guess who fills their mind all the time? No, not you, them. They're constantly in their own mind, and they maneuver chess pieces, right? Like chess pieces. They maneuver people in their life to get them what they want. And sadly, it takes a very callous and unemotional interpersonal style to achieve that. And believe it or not, this is, most people, when I demonstrate this, most people are like, really? This can't be. And I'm like, yes, it is. So let me show you something. You guys probably know what I'm going to demonstrate here, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of a demonstration. Let me start over. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a demonstration on paper so that you can see exactly what you need to be looking at in this whole live chat tonight, because you may have a sibling that has all of these disorders. And it probably gets very complicated for you trying to deal with them if you still deal with them. Perhaps you've gone no contact because they're very unhealthy people, But I'm going to demonstrate this on paper, and then I'm going to break down and define antisocial personality disorder, sociopath, and psychopath so that you can get an idea of what it is. And I also have my DSM. I am not a fan of this thing, okay? But is it a a rail or some kind of guide rail that can give us a little bit of insights on clinical patterns and diagnostic labels and, give us some ideas to what a series of symptoms could mean? Yes. So I'm going to show you in this tonight what the DSM says about an antisocial personality. So you're going to get the clear diagnostic criteria. Okay. So here's what happens in a family where there's a child or a sibling who is a sociopath. Okay. If you have a sibling who has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, so ADHD, right? Or we can also say ADD, attention deficit disorder. And there's a lot of impulsivity. And in addition to that impulsivity, you have acting out behaviors, manipulation, lies and deceit, inability to pay attention for long periods of time, poor concentration, irritability, moodiness, scatteredness, right? Those are all ADHD symptoms, right? If they are not properly treated, so medication is not had, right? There's no medication. There's no therapy. There's no education. There's nothing. You've just been diagnosed with ADHD, okay? So if you have a sibling like this, and there's no treatment, a child with ADHD can become so unrecognizable just because of how ADHD impacts the brain. This is not everyone, but this is some. They can become so unrecognizable in their behavior, how they think, right? How scattered they are, that they then jump from ADHD to symptoms of ODD. So we're talking oppositional defiant disorder, disregard for the rights of other people, pleasure or some kind of joy when they are getting on somebody's last nerve. They seem to be seekers of problems at all times. There's no peace with them. You tell them to do one thing, they do the other thing, right? They know you told them to pick up the socks that are on the floor and put them in the basket. But what they do is they pick up the basket and they go to the socks and they leave the socks on the floor. So at least they kind of tried, right? But they didn't try completely. So then what happens? Mom starts yelling. Dad is slamming doors and upset because you never listened to me, right? Oppositional defiant disorder. I don't have a problem getting on adults' nerves. I don't have a problem being particular and not wanting to do what you're asking me to do. Also, I don't have a problem ignoring you, disregarding you, calling you names, maybe even cussing you out. I like the attention that I get from being told to stop 900 million times. I don't have self-respect, so I do whatever comes natural, and it's probably going to be an impulsive thing. Oppositional defiant disorder. I argue with adults. I don't have boundaries, and I don't have respect for myself or you. Oppositional defiant disorder. If that is not properly treated, guys, right, then we go to what's called conduct disorder. And just think of a juvenile delinquent. We're talking about early sexual experiences. We're talking about pyromania, so setting fires. We're talking about animal cruelty. We're talking about getting a deep pleasure out of being on top. So if that means I rob your home, or I steal something from you, or, I go to stores and I steal things and I put things in my pockets, I get arrested all the time. I'm constantly in a juvenile delinquency center. I am being sent off to a residential program because I can't keep my hands to myself. I'm constantly in fights. I'm constantly assaulting people. And on top of that, I may have sexually assaulted my young sister and possibly beat the living daylights out of my brother. Okay. That is exactly what one of my clients had done many years ago when I was working in the juvenile delinquency part of the system. I had a young man that did all of that and more. So that's conduct disorder. That is really, if you ask me, that's a junior sociopath. Okay. We're getting to a place where this, for the purposes of this conversation, this sibling has no respect for society. These are the kids who get constant suspensions in school. They get tons of detentions. They are disrespectful on the school buses, right? The driver can't even get the other kids home because the child with conduct disorder is making such a scene that nobody can get home safely and on time. And these are the kind of kids that don't care about curfew. They'll do whatever they need to do to get the attention and to feel like they're in control. They often also assault their parents. Sometimes police have to go into the homes of kids with conduct disorder and break up a family, a fight or confrontation, because these kind of kids don't really care. They have no fear. They think they are invincible with the system, with their family system, with the school system, right? They're really just like little demons, if you ask me. And not all kids with conduct disorder go down this road. Sometimes kids diagnosed with conduct disorder can actually get the right treatment and turn around and be wonderful, beautiful kids. But then most of the time, they end up becoming sociopaths. So that's when we get to antisocial personality disorder. Okay. So here's that little bit of a demonstration for you. We have ADHD, we have ODD, then we have conduct disorder, CD, and then we have antisocial personality disorder, ASPD, antisocial personality disorder. Now, some of you may be like, well, does that mean that all people with ADHD in some form or fashion can become a sociopath? Not at all. Some people with ADHD just have ADHD. And some people with ADD just have ADD and they go on with their normal lives, right? They struggle a little bit, but then they continue to go on. But the reality for some people is that they tend to graduate. They graduate from ADHD to ODD to conduct disorder and then to antisocial personality disorder. Now, when it comes to antisocial personality disorder, I'm going to leave this be for right now. I'm coming back to it, I think. When we look at antisocial personality disorder, we are now looking at a sibling who has absolutely almost just about every symptom of ADHD. So they can be very inattentive, very impulsive, trouble making proper decisions. They can be very scattered. They can be restless. They can have a hard time grasping concepts. They can also have a really hard time functioning in structured activities of daily living, showering, bathing, eating, being healthy, respecting other people's space, getting up and going to work, putting money in the bank. They struggle with everyday activities because something easily triggers them, or they have this hostility and explosiveness at the core of who they are. So you've got this antisocial person who doesn't like to be around other people, which is fine, but they like to isolate. They really have a hard time connecting with other people. They often tend to have like this odd kind of way about themselves. They kind of at times come across as flamboyant or egocentric, right? They're all about themselves. They're arrogant. And they also struggle with respect of themselves and other people. They tend to have a very pervasive pattern of disregarding the rights of others, a very pervasive pattern of disregarding the rights of others. And if you have a sibling like this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They don't have the ability to say, you know what, I'm not going to do this because I want to make sure that me and my sibling stays like this. They have a complete disregard. They push you to the side in their heart, in their mind, and in their world. You mean absolutely nothing to them. Again, they tend to have a very callous and unemotional interpersonal style, meaning their relationship communication tends to be cold and callous. It also tends to be disregarding, minimizing, sometimes even condescending. There's a lot of problems with these kind of siblings. It isn't an easy thing to deal with, right? Because of how complicated these kind of siblings are. Let me also say here, they have a profound impairment with functioning in life, a profound impairment in functioning in life. They can't function like most people. And because of that, they isolate sometimes, right? They're not going to pursue the life that maybe you have pursued, and they're not going to fit in nice and neatly into your life, right? Because they have a profound impairment in how they function in life. They often have a very poor quality of life, and that means sleeping around, not having a committed relationship, possibly having numbers of children, right, by different fathers, being arrested constantly, having a true record. Okay, and we're talking about years and years of being in the legal system and getting a record, and sometimes for petty theft, traffic citations. And then you may see things graduate to sexual assault, and then disorderly conduct, and then divorce proceedings, and then harassment. And then, and it continues with these kind of individuals. And so you may be the prim, proper, educated, loving, stable sibling, and you look over here and this is your unstable sibling who's all across town making a fool out of your family name, and they have a ton of legal issues, right? And sometimes they do get married, they do seem to be doing okay, but somewhere along the line they just kind of throw that out the window and say, you know what, I'm just going to do whatever the heck I want to do. And so that's when they start dating and sleeping around and having multiple kids and being very irresponsible with a lot of their lives. These are the kind of parents who end up prostitutes, or they end up in multiple relationships that their children have to be introduced to, And so the lifestyle of a person with antisocial personality disorder can be very destabilizing. And let me throw this in here too. There often tends to be legal challenges. They are never, hardly ever, I'll put it that way, separate from a legal challenge. They're always going to somehow have some kind of legal issue that they are trying to get out of, or that they've been in before, because they just can't stay out of trouble, right? So that's the antisocial personality. And they do tend to be dominant with their siblings. They want to be on top, and they want to keep the place in their lives where they're in full control. But here's the sad part. You may be in full control, and you may be driving this boat, but you're driving it over a cliff because you're not making sound decisions, and you're unable to keep your family safe and respectable, right? So individuals with antisocial personality disorder, and I'm clarifying this tonight because a lot of people think antisocial, oh, I just don't want to deal with people, I'd rather be on my own. Okay, that's on the very mild end. You know what I mean? That's on the mild end of things. The antisocial personality disorder that I'm talking about tonight is more the moderate to severe. So think about it on a spectrum, right? I'm talking about the antisocial personality that is moderate to severe, and those individuals are very dysfunctional. But some people have been diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, and they just don't want to deal with people. They find relationship challenging, even though they kind of want a relationship. They find it challenging. It doesn't really make sense to them. They feel kind of out of step with things, So that's on the lower end. But for tonight's conversation, we're talking about, guys, the sibling who is moderate to severe antisocial. Now, give me 1 second, guys. I need a sip of water. I see you guys chatting it up over there. Excuse me. So I am going to get to you, but I want to go through the diagnostic criteria so that you can walk away tonight saying, you know what? I think my sibling really is antisocial personality disorder. Or you can walk away and say, oh, maybe that's not what I thought. And guess what, guys? After I'm done with this, I'm going to separate what a sociopath is and what a psychopath is. And then we're going to go ahead and I'm going to get to the chat box and we'll continue on. Okay, guys? So let me be reminded, because actually, you want to know what's on top of my DSM? Is this okay for me to say? Probably not. I'm going to say it anyway. This, guys, okay, literally sits on top of my DSM. Don't tell my colleagues I do that. There's a reason for that. And part of it is because I, number one, have clearly memorized the diagnoses that I typically get in my private practice. So I really don't need this. You know, the other piece of that is some kind of like undercurrent annoyance with the DSM. Okay, so we're going to go to, excuse me, we're going to go to personality disorders, which is page 733. So 733. And when you get to the chapter on personality disorders, we're talking about cluster B, okay? So I'm going to read this just so that you will have the actual clinical definition, and then I'm going to get back into how I run my live chats and conversations, okay? So ready for the definition, guys? Because I want you to be able to say, you know what? I think I know what it actually means now. There's criterion A, B, C, and D in the DSM on all diagnoses, okay? Number A, the diagnostic criteria is a pervasive pattern of disregard for and the violation of the rights of others occurring since the age of 15 and indicated by 3 or more of the following symptoms. And I'm going to give you those in a second here. So let me break this down. It's a pervasive pattern of behavior, meaning that it is chronic, it is cemented, it is something that is a part of that person's way that they engage with other people, right? It's an interpersonal style. It's a behavioral issue. It's a mindset. It's a mentality, right? And it has to have hit at the age of 15. And that is typically when most kids who are going to become sociopaths get the diagnosis of ADHD, get the diagnosis of conduct disorder, get the diagnosis of ODD, and it tends to be at the age of 15, okay? You guys may be asking why. I could tell you why, but that's going to be another 5 hours, so we're not going to get into that in tonight's live chat. But it has to be a pervasive pattern, right? A pervasive pattern of behavior. There's a disregard for the rights of others, and it most likely hit at the age of 15, okay? And we would call that childhood onset, okay? 3 or more of the following symptoms has to be identified. 1, a failure to conform to social norms with respect to lawful behavior, right? So repeatedly performing acts that are grounds for arrest. Okay, there's 1. So think of A. So criterion A would be a pervasive pattern of behavior that is a complete disregard for other people at the age of 15. Boom, A. But under A, you have number 1. So number 1 is a failure to conform to social norms with respect to lawful behavior, right? As indicated by repeatedly performing acts that are grounds for arrest. So really what you want to do is you want to say in your mind, okay, did my sibling have a variety of behaviors that were grounds for arrest as we were growing up? If yes, check mark. So there's 1. There's number 1 that's qualifying them for a diagnosis. 2, deceitfulness as indicated by repeated lying, right? Conning others for personal profit or pleasure. Okay. So that's number 2, deceitfulness or repeated lying or conning others for personal profit or pleasure. Did my sibling lie all the time? Yes. Did my sibling, this is an example, did my sibling lie all the time? Yes. Did my sibling rob the next door neighbor who's 80 years old and trusted him? He took her money, took her wallet? Yes. If that's your sibling, check. That's number 2. Okay. Number 3, impulsivity or failure to plan ahead. Impulsivity or failure to plan ahead. What's that mean, guys? There's no forethought. There's no planning. There's no proper decision making. There's no checking facts. There's no asking for input. I am going to act impulsively in a pervasive chronic way where I make all kinds of bad decisions because I don't think before I act, right? Can you hear the ADHD part of this now? 4. So if that's your sibling, check. That would really be all. right? Because you have to have 3 or more. So, okay, there's 3. Maybe your sibling is an antisocial personality disorder. 4, irritability and aggressiveness, right? Repeated physical fights or assaults. So we're talking about disorderly conduct, constantly getting in trouble in school, constantly roaming the neighborhood, getting into spats and trouble that just shouldn't be happening, right? And this doesn't have to be as a kid. This doesn't have to be as an adolescent. It could be as an adult, right? I have adult clients now who are 25 years of age, and they go to a bar and they get in a fight. And it's like, come on, you're 25, don't do this. It's disorderly conduct and you're going to get in trouble. But individuals who have an antisocial personality disorder, they engage in these behaviors. Okay. So number 5 would be a reckless disregard for the safety of self and others. A reckless disregard for the safety of self and others. Leaving a child in a car unattended to, with it running and the keys in the ignition, right? Driving behind multiple cars, riding their bumper in terrible weather and feeling justified. Reckless. And it's a disregard for the rights and the safety of others, right? Road rage, riding on people's bumpers, laying on the horn, switching different lanes, right? Without being mindful that number 1, I can kill somebody. Number 2, I don't have a right to act this way behind the wheel of a car. The wheel of a car, my grandmother used to say all the time, she says, a vehicle is a weapon. If you think about it that way, you'll drive better. A vehicle is a weapon. And if you kill somebody, then now you're asking to go to jail or prison for a very, very long time. You lose, and so does the other person in the other car, right? So not having the ability to pump the brakes and say, and ask yourself, is this behavior okay, right? So a sibling that has antisocial personality disorder, they're not going to ask themselves that, right? They feel justified in their behavior. Number 6 is a consistent irresponsibility. So a repeated failure to sustain consistent work behavior or honor financial obligations. Let me go back over that. Okay. So this is number 6, consistent irresponsibility, repeated failure to sustain consistent work behavior or honor financial obligations, constantly getting fired. That's how we're going to break that down. Constantly getting fired, constantly being written up, constantly showing up to work late, not being able to perform the duties of your job, right? The sibling, not you, but your sibling. Bouncing from one job to the next, to the next, to the next, having a lot of money and then spending it all and being broke, right? Manipulating people on the job, gossiping and creating trouble and challenges on the job that gets them fired, terminated, right? Reported. Loss of license can also be an issue. In my local area, there's an attorney who took advantage of senior citizens. He was working with them and trying to help them, but he took great, advantage of them. And so now he's being, tried as a criminal, right? Because he was taking a lot of senior citizens' money and had over $300,000 worth of their money. And, he spent their money, put it on things he wasn't supposed to put it on, and he manipulated them for many years. My local news says it was 5 years he got away with this behavior, and he earned $300,000 engaging in these negligent and irresponsible and despicable behaviors, right? So that kind of sums up this statement here, right? There's a consistent irresponsibility, and they can't keep a job, won't keep a job, or feel they're too big and important to have the job that their education affords them, right? Or they can't sustain consistency with financial obligations. Number 7 is lack of remorse, as indicated by being indifferent, right? So it's like they don't have a heart or a soul. They're indifferent. They could care less. Or they rationalize having hurt somebody, right? Mistreated someone or stolen from somebody. If you hadn't showed up in my life rich and dressing flamboyant with rings and bracelets, I probably would not have robbed you. That's kind of how their mind thinks, And then, of course, we have B, C, and D criteria. That's really not important, but I'll give it to you anyway. The individual criteria B is the individual has to be 18 years of age to get this diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder. There has to be evidence of conduct disorder by the age of 15. Okay. Conduct disorder is technically juvenile delinquency. And D criteria is that there's no other diagnosis that can kind of step in their shoes here and be diagnosed, right? I think that is it for the diagnostic features here. Yeah, that's all I'm going to give you out of my structured DSM. And as you can see, it's a pretty hefty read here. And the chapter on personality disorders is huge, and it's because a lot of society, we see a lot of personality disorders in society. And sadly, antisocial personality disorder is one of them. Now, before I go to the chat box, because I see you guys chatting it up. I know you're going to want me to answer some of your questions and engage with you, but let me jump into what a sociopath and a psychopath is, and then I'll go back to you. A sociopath, in a nutshell, is a very clumsy individual. Okay, this is different. Separate this in your mind. This is different from an antisocial personality disorder. Okay. Let me also clarify this before I jump in. You cannot be diagnosed as a sociopath, and you certainly can't be diagnosed as a psychopath. Okay. So your sibling cannot receive a clinical diagnosis of a sociopath. Your sibling cannot receive a clinical diagnosis, of a psychopath. Why? Because those are two terms that are sometimes used interchangeably. They are also two terms that doesn't have a clinical criteria that has to be met, right? So think of the term sociopathy, think of the term psychopathy as two terms that are used to categorize an individual, a sibling, or any other person who doesn't necessarily have antisocial personality disorder in a clinical sense. A sociopath is clumsy. They don't have respect for the rights of others. They tend to have a very weak conscience. They kind of crack under pressure. They have legal issues and they're unstable. They tend to really disregard the safety of others. They disregard safety in a general sense as well. They're very irresponsible, very compulsive, impulsive, and they tend to have no long-term plans in life. A sociopath is that sibling who sits at the dinner table dressed to the nine, as they say. He looks good, he smells good, he seems decent, he's clean cut, he talks really smart, he knows how to hold a good conversation. He tends to be, your brother, for example, tends to be very suave, but you also notice that he can kind of crack under pressure. You notice he has a very weak ego. You also notice that he tends to, what's the word? He doesn't have any guilt or remorse. He tends to be very self-consumed. But when you pull apart his life, you don't see education. You don't see a good money-making job. You don't see that he's stable in his world. You see a lot of instability, right? And he sleeps all day. He gets up at 7 p.m. He goes out and walks around on the street to get in trouble, right? He loves dressing up and looking good, but he has absolutely nothing to do and nowhere to go. Sociopath, right? And that's how we can kind of tag that sibling. He looks the part. He even sounds the part, but he isn't. Instability in his life all the way around, and not to mention legal trouble, being arrested, owing child support, getting divorced frequently, right? The list goes on. Probation, being on probation. All of these things have to occur together, guys, okay? So in case you're saying, wait a minute, my sibling has that, but not that, keep in mind that with a sociopath, a psychopath, an antisocial personality in terms of a sibling, they have to have the majority of these behaviors to be categorized, right? A psychopath. Okay, these are your Jeffrey Dahmers. These are the Dennis Nilsons. These are, his name escaped me. Not Bob Jones. No, I can't think of it. But his last name is Jones. Oh, I hate when my mind does that. But a psychopath is an individual who is charming, suave, female or male, charming, suave, beautiful, handsome, has sometimes a lot of sex appeal, right? Comfortable, cool, calm, and collected, laid back, you know. But they also have, on top of that, poor judgment. They're manipulative. There's failure to follow a plan in life. So maybe they were on a certain path, they were looking good, and then they said, you know what, I'm done. I'm not doing this, right? So an inability to pursue success, right? There's a poverty of major affective emotions. I'll put it that way. So in other words, they don't have heartache and pain at an intensity that we think they should, right? Their emotions are not as robust and big as most people. They tend to be very self-contained, and they do not have a weak conscience. They tend to have what's the word? Personal insight. And that's what makes them scary, because they know something's wrong with them. They often know something is wrong with how they think and how they behave, but can they control that? Most likely not, right? So they end up being unfaithful. They're pathological liars. They are unreliable. Okay. And on top of that, these are the individuals that may have a little bit more ego to commit a murder, to commit a crime that puts everybody at stake, right? So your school shooters can fit in here, perhaps, right? It's a really depressing kind of spectrum, but I hope that me going over this, you're able to say, wait a minute, that's the clinical version of antisocial. And then we also have, on the side of this clinical criteria, we have a sociopath and a psychopath that society has created. These terms are not clinical, but it does describe a pattern of behaviors that really can negatively impact your life and a sibling. Right. So we're not saying a sociopath and a psychopath doesn't exist. We're saying that these are two different things. Think about the psychopath as being, 100% detrimental to society. And think about a sociopath as being about 50% detrimental to society. Right. They're a little less complex sociopaths. You can kind of figure out who they are, because sometimes if you're dealing with a female who's a sociopath, they can be rather ditzy, and they throw their sex appeal out there and they throw their attractiveness out there, and boy, they've hooked a man. And so now she's manipulating him and taking his money and, forcing him to propose. And, now she's ready to have about 20 kids with him. And the list just goes on, right? A psychopath, however, is going to be very much in control. They're going to know what they want. They're going to go after what they want. And they're going to do any and everything they can to get what they want. They're charming. They're smart. They're intelligent. They're not going to leave their trace behind. A sociopath will. Okay, guys? So when we come back to this, I'm going to go to the chat box. When we come back to this, I'm going to give you some common behaviors of a sibling like this, who's a sociopath or a psychopath. And then I'm going to tell you how this impacts you, because it impacts you. Okay. Bear with me. Pink Meadows, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. Good to see you, Bossy Truthy 15. And Elizabeth, good to see you as well. James McDonald, hello to all three of you. Good to see you back tonight. James McDonald says, hi TM fam. Yep, me and my toxic family have become emotional strangers. The distance is self-preservation. I'm afraid. Yeah, I totally understand. Totally understand. Yeah. And if you realize that you have a sibling who is a psychopath or a sociopath, it's really easy for you to feel fear, because the sociopath and the psychopath, and even the individual who has antisocial personality disorder, they are not going to consider you at all. So if you're getting ready to die, oh, well, I'm sorry, I couldn't help you. Right? Or if you are on your last leg, they're out somewhere partying in a club, getting drunk and having a good time. They don't care anything about you. So the fear, James McDonald, is understandable. It's understandable. Okay, bear with me as I find some more comments. Hanifa El Amin, it's so good to see you again. You guys have been so very consistent. I love seeing you every live chat. I'm so glad you're looking forward to this. And thank you so much for that. Oh, I love you in return. Thank you. Let me tell you, I had to drop out of working with juvenile delinquents um, over 10 years ago because it is tiring, and I didn't like sitting in a jail cell talking to an 18-year-old who just committed murder. I didn't like sitting in a juvenile delinquency center with boys. I used to work with all boys, believe it or not. I didn't like sitting in my office talking to these boys, and they have, you know, um, anklets on. I was trying to find the right word, anklets on, and they have chains around their ankle, and they're chained by their wrist. And, it was just such a depressing, tiring place to be in all the time. There we are. We're back. It's a very draining experience, and to believe that we have a society full of young people who are like this, it's even more depressing. Okay, let me go back to the chat. Hold on, guys. What in the world? Phoenix, there you go. I couldn't find you. Phoenix, good to see you. Welcome back. Yeah, I don't blame you. You need a backup generator, Phoenix, in case the power does go out. Okay, bear with me because YouTube is acting wonky again. What is happening? Okay, all my comments are like backwards, guys. I don't know what happened. Hold on. I don't know what happened here, but we're just going to go with it. We're going to go with it. Okay. Bossy Truthy 15 says, oh my God, lying Tamara. Yes. No shame in that they will proudly lie. Yeah. They lie all the time. This is just who they are. A Sweden. Hello and welcome. Good to see you back in tonight's live chat. A Sweden says, I was somewhat like this around age 12 to 14, more stilling stuff. Yeah. That's understandable. Most kids okay, let me clarify that. Some kids between the age of 12 to 14 do engage in those kind of behaviors because kids will be kids, right? But what I want you to keep in mind as we go along in this live chat is that the behavior has to be pervasive. It has to be chronic. It has to be continual, right? And despite the consequences, it's a behavior that continues. Some kids or most kids will steal something, get caught, and never do it again. Now, really temperamental and, rather mature kids can go into a store, steal something, walk away with it, right? Store owner calls the police. The child gets cuffed and sent to a juvenile delinquency center. And he sees that he's going to be on probation for 6 months. He has to do community service and he's not going to get off the hook, right? They stop doing the behavior and they say, you know what, I don't want to live a life like this, right? So not every sibling who has antisocial personality disorder or conduct disorder will stay that way. Sometimes they do change. So keep that in mind. Cornbread, hello and welcome. Love your name. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. Jermaine, good to see you as well. I'm just trying to get through some things. Michelle Lynn, good to see you. You say your sister. Yeah. We're going to get into the specifics of this sibling behavior in just a second. Ellie Wynn, good to see you back tonight. I love your consistency as well. All of you. You guys just show up and I love it. Ellie Wynn says they seem to be good at avoiding prison. Yeah. Who do you guys think on that spectrum of antisocial personality, sociopathy, and psychopathy, who do you think on that spectrum is really good at avoiding prison? What would you say? They always avoid prison. Somehow they get handcuffed and they're let go. They go to prison, they do what they need to do, and they get out. They get out of prison, still do criminal things, but they don't get caught. Who do you guys think is on that spectrum of behaviors? The psychopath. And here's why. I hope somebody said a psychopath, because a psychopath is charming, right? They may be unfaithful. They may be unreliable. They may have a failure to follow a life plan, but psychopaths tend to be consistent sometimes. They tend to be charming. They tend to be physically attractive with a lot of sex appeal. So that gets them what they want. Some are narcissistic and some are highly intelligent. And so it's not the sociopath that always gets out of going to jail. It's not the antisocial personality it's typically the psychopath, the Jeffrey Dahmers, the Dennis Nilsen, those are the individuals. It's scary, right? Okay, John Tracy, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. And you're right. Yeah, just walk away. Walk away. Dre Williams, good to see you back tonight. Hello and welcome. And Angela Nicoletti, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. Marley K, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat as well. Dr. Right Life Truth Teller, hello and welcome. Good to see you tonight. Marley K says, this is my mama. Oh God. Yeah. When it's your parent, let me know if you want me to do a live chat on parents who are sociopaths and psychopaths. I don't know if I want to do that. It's going to be a really tough topic, but let me know. I'll do it for you. I'll do anything for you. T Bunny Shy, hello and welcome. Good to see you back in tonight's live chat. T Bunny Shy says, my sister cons companies for free products. She pretends her order was bad. Oh, don't tell me this, T Bunny Shy. I just had a situation happen like that. She pretends her order was bad and gets a free replacement. There is glee and delight in her eyes, getting away with it. Yeah. But doesn't that show you how naive the system is too, right? I had somebody come to me for treatment and I detected the antisocial personality. And I said, you know what? I'm going to have to refer you to my coworker. He is really good with antisocial personalities. In my current private practice, I'm not taking on those clients. So let me refer you. So in the process of referring her to my other colleague, I was going through her file because I don't want to refer to him somebody that is out of his wheelhouse, And you're right. This is a common behavior. I've seen it many times. But with this particular person, oh my God, she would get stuff back from Target. She would get things back from Walmart. Why? Because if you go to Target, you do an online pickup, you get home, you say that this isn't really what I ordered. You can go to your app, right? Go to your app, hit dissatisfied or whatever. I can't think of what the term is. Start a return. That's what it is. Start a return. You go down a list of items. You choose that item that you are claiming isn't what you want. You hit some other button. And next thing you know, Target does this very classy, gracious thing, which is your refund is on its way. There's no need to return it. And she kept the items every single time. It's like you almost have to have so many restrictions on people who are sociopaths and they have antisocial personality traits because they're constantly manipulating things, So I know you're right, T Bunny Shy. That is an honest experience there because I've seen it. Tammy Nicely, hello and welcome. Good to see you back in tonight's live chat. Okay, I'm looking for comments here. Jeremy Robinson, good to see you back. Once I find a comment, I'm going to read it. Jermaine says, oh my God, I'm even more terrified of my sister now. Well, here's my suggestion as a clinician who has worked with sociopaths and psychopaths during my career, and I still find them in some of the parents I see. I still see them in some of the family members I counsel, these kind of personality traits. And let me say, the best thing to do when you start to see that a family member is a sociopath, a psychopath, or they're antisocial, the first thing to do is make sure that they have absolutely no connection to your bank accounts, no connection to your social media accounts, that they don't have a key to your home if you can help it, right? That they only know but so much about you that's private, because a sibling who has some kind of disregard for the rights of others and disregard for your rights will do anything to harm you. Post something that wasn't you, post something on your social media and put your name under it, right? Still somehow break into your phone and steal some phone numbers and call those people, and right. So it can get really ugly. So you do want to, as much as you can, put up a barrier or a boundary so that you don't get bitten, right? Bossy Truthy 15, thank you for that. That's so sweet of you. Thank you. Breezy, hello. Glad to see you tonight. Welcome back. Dr. Right, Dr. No, Dr. Right Life Truth Teller. Yeah, I had it right. I don't know why I was looking weird. How can you get a copy of the DSM? Do you really want to pay the money it costs to get this thing? Okay, let's see here. You can go to psychiatryonline.org, okay? And psychiatryonline.org if you want. Or I think you can get one from, you might be able to get one from Amazon too. It may be a little strangely put together though. And you can probably get one from Barnes and Noble if they have them on hand. But I literally paid, I'm going to tell you what I paid for my DSM, and then we're going to continue on. DSM-5 purchase. I think I paid $200 and something for mine. And you can find them on Etsy or Amazon for a little bit of a cheaper price. Like here's one on Amazon, but it's not the text revision, excuse me. It's the DSM-5, that's it. But there's been revisions already to the DSM-5. So the DSM without the revisions would be $158.89, okay? That's a whole car payment right there. Or you can buy the full version that I have, the full clinical version, and mine was like $200 and something. So, if that's what you want to do, go ahead. I don't think it's worth it though. Nadia Consulent. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Probably not. Hello and welcome to the channel. Good to see you tonight. Nadia says they do each other wrong within the family. They don't do strangers wrong. Yeah, they do. They do. And that's what's tricky, right? Now, if you're talking about somebody with an antisocial personality disorder, they may be a little less likely to act out with strangers, right? Because they have some awareness of themselves, but there are times when they will act out against strangers. So an antisocial personality, a sociopath, a psychopath, they will act out with just about anyone, whether you're a family member or a stranger, whether you're a coworker or a boss, they're going to act out in some form or fashion at some point. Does that make sense, guys? Breezy, you are so lovely. I don't know how to thank you for constantly buying the chat memberships. I just think that's the classiest and gracious thing that I've seen on YouTube. So that's so kind of you. Thank you for doing that. And thank you for blessing people and gifting them, right? I think that's so selfless. It's wonderful. Thank you for that. Rolando DD. Hopefully I said that correctly. Hello and welcome to the channel. Good to see you. You say that I'm talking about your brother and your father. Yeah. I'm really sorry to hear that. That's rough, right? Here's what's interesting. Some studies on antisocial personality shows that men, you ready for this, guys? I'm not being sexist. Blame the DSM, okay? That men tend to be a little more antisocial and sociopathic and psychopathic than women, that the higher numbers of antisocial behavior tends to be with men. So it doesn't shock me, Rolando DD, that your brother and your father tend to have these particular traits. Men tend to top or tip the charts. Ash Shakur Whitaker, hello and welcome. Good to see you back tonight. I see what you're saying, Rolando. Yeah. Danita Miner, hello and welcome. Thank you for that. Jim Jones. Yes, you got it. Welcome to tonight's live chat as well. Thank you, Dr. Right Life Truth Teller. Yep. Jim Jones. Absolutely. You know a person is a psychopath when they can lead you down the road of actually taking your own life. That's how you know that you're dealing with a psychopath. They're smooth. They are convincing. They are manipulative. They are dark. They are strategic. And that's how you know you're dealing with a psychopath. A sociopath is not going to go to the extent that Jim Jones went through or to. Jim Jones had literally a following, and a following based on complete nonsense, right? But how could he lead these people with complete nonsense and they not say, wait a minute, you're wrong. What are you talking about? This doesn't add up. You think I'm supposed to take my life to be a part of your group? Why would I want to do that? There was nobody there that said that, right? And so the best way to conceptualize Jim Jones and the hold that he had on those people is a psychopath. He had what it took to convince them. It's so scary, right? James McDonald says, you broke that down nicely, Tamara. Sociopaths and narcissists never present to you what's on the tin. Yeah. Thank you. Absolutely. Very much agree. All right, guys, let me keep moving so we can get to the rest of the content. The Good Glow, hello and welcome. Glad to see you tonight. Nancy R, I see you as well. Good to see you. Good to see you. HG Apple, hello and welcome to the channel. Good to see you tonight. HG Apple says she was also against me. I think I may have come in late on this. I don't know why my chat is like backwards, but anyway, she was also against me. It's hard to believe anything she says is out of love and not to try and get me sent to prison, dead and killed by suicide, or like I said, killed. That's what I get for being in an Eastern Star Freemason family tied to trafficking in some aspects or another due to affiliations, and also what they allowed to happen to me for the sake of money. I wonder what area you're from. I don't want you to say that live, but I wonder what area. You can find a very high number of psychopaths and sociopaths sometimes based on the area, you know. Angela Nicoletti says, oh yeah, when we get sick, they truly do not care. Lack of conscience, sadistic people. Yeah. A place to worship the Lord in truth and spirit. Hello and welcome. Good to see you tonight, says, great to see you. Blessings. Yeah, it's good to see you too. And many of God's blessings to you. I love your screen name. I think it's so sweet and truthful. James McDonald is helping me break down the DSM, guys. James McDonald says these cluster B personality types tend to be psychic and emotional vampires that drain the life force out of you. Yeah, from you. Totally agree. Go check out my live chat when I talked recently about emotional vampires. It's up. Miss Jean MacArthur, you're my last one so I can go back to the content. Miss Janine says, I have siblings who have always said, I love you, but I hate you. They've slightly changed over the years, but still an air of uncertainty and anger. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah. The way that you're going to be impacted by these individuals is sometimes through envy, jealousy, right? Because they don't like who you are. They don't like that you can see them. And they most definitely don't like that you're ahead of them, right? So you're going to see them jealous and envious of you in some fashion. Okay, here are the common symptoms or the common issues and behaviors. I've seen this. Psychology points this out. Research points this out. These individuals tend to have the number one concern. This is the entire elephant in the room. It's limited pro-social behaviors. Limited pro-social behaviors. They're not going to donate. They're not going to hold the door open for that elderly woman unless they feel that they can win her heart and get something from them. They're not going to build a friendship or a work relationship or a connection unless they feel that they can manipulate it and get something from it, right? Limited pro-social behavior. They're not going to rally for somebody who was running for mayor. They're not going to speak out against murder and crime. They're not going to do anything that is pro-social. They're also not going to educate people to the truth of things, right? They're going to educate you, just like Jim Jones, to something that is way off the grid. It almost seems insane and there's no basis to it or for it, right? So they're not pro-social in a way that says, I want to educate you. I want to give you the truth. You know, practically what you're getting from me on the channel here and what you get from a lot of other channels that are similar to mine. They're not going to do that. They're not going to waste their time. They don't feel that it is important for them to be pro-social. The other thing is sibling estrangement. These kind of siblings, you know, they can either just walk away from you and not say a word, right? Or cuss you out and then walk away from you, or say some really arrogant things and some really hurtful things about you, and then not text you back, block your number on their phone, unfollow you on social media, and act like you never existed. And they can often do that without a conscience, right? Especially if you're talking about a sociopath. They have a dampened, what's the word that I want to use here? They have a dampened affect, a dampened affect. You're not going to see them respond to things that are emotional. You're not going to see their emotions on their face. They're not going to respond to you in an emotional way. They have a dampened affect. They also tend to self-blame. They say things in a backhanded way. Is that the word I'm looking for? They kind of go behind your back and say things about you and create trouble. They triangulate, they manipulate, right? We know that. They self-blame. So in other words, where they get you to self-blame, I'll put it that way. They get you to self-blame. They know all the buttons to push to cause you to say, well, maybe she blew up on me because it's my fault. Maybe she did A, B, and C because it's my fault, right? They know how to get through to you in a way that makes you feel guilty and makes you feel like, you should be ashamed of your own behavior. They lack transparency. They're not honest. They're not open. They're not engaging. They're not smart. They're nothing of the kind. They tend to be really, what's the word I'm looking for? They tend to just be self-centered, egocentric, meaning that they're all about themselves, right? And they're going to minimize you and make you feel like you are beneath them no matter what. They're not honest people. So there's a total lack of transparency with them. There also tends to be some difficulty with sharing, right? And we're not talking about, I'm going to give you a piece of my cookie. Do you want some water too? I'm going to give you a piece of my cake over there and some ice cream. Do you want to share this dinner with me? We're not talking about that. We're talking about a difficulty sharing in terms of life, right? I'm not going to share my understanding with you on this one. I'm not going to share what I learned there with you. I'm not going to share what mom told me is going to happen when she passes away. I'm not going to share that with you. I'm going to keep you as off base as I can as your sibling. And then I'm going to get in your face, smile in your face, and make you think that we are sisters, or make you think that we are brother and sister, or we're brothers. But deep down, I really don't care about you, Now, let me also say that these kind of individuals, they tend to engage in projective identification, what we talked about yesterday, right, guys? They tend to engage in projective identification. They also tend to be very bent on projecting, right? So they're going to project their values onto you. They're going to project their mindset, their idiocy, and they're going to make it a you problem. And they're not going to digest that and say, you know what, this is a me problem. I need to change. They're also not going to say, I need to change. I probably should throw that out there as well. They're not going to say, I need to change. You're going to find people with antisocial personality disorder. You're going to find sociopaths in the criminal justice system working in high positions, judges, right? Lawyers, paralegals. You might even find them in the mental health field, right? Antisocial and sociopaths, therapists, psychiatrists, social workers, CEOs of businesses in the field of psychology, right? CEOs of residential treatment facilities, the list goes on. These kind of individuals, they're more, what's the word I'm looking for, guys? They're more common than we think, but because they've learned to blend in, it's hard to really point them out. You really do have to be in a close relationship with the person in order to see who they really are. These kind of siblings also, they tend to, what's the word that I'm going to use here? They kind of burden the family. They burden the family with their idiocy, and you being their sibling, you're going to feel that burden, right? Because you can't talk to your sibling, you can't engage them, you can't show them that you love and care about them, you can't stop them from being impulsive and reckless and restless. You can't love them. They are not siblings that you can love because their mind, their disregard for others, right? They have gotten a benefit from thinking like they do and behaving like they do. So it just kind of strengthens that antisocial behavior. It strengthens that sociopathy and psychopathy. So they're not going to easily change. The only thing that will make them change, I'll put it this way, and this is backed by research, the only thing that's going to make them change is the law system, the legal system sometimes, being threatened with divorce, especially if that marriage makes them look good, right? So think about a high powered attorney in an upper class area. He has to be married, right? Because that's what every high powered attorney in his town is, right? And he's got to have a few kids on the side. Okay. And he has to be rich. And the number one thing that kind of holds that image together, as he's a psychopath. So the only thing that holds that image together is having a wife, right? So he's got to have one of those. So once he gets all those things, he's going to continue on appearing as if he's pro-social, educated, cares about other people, has everybody's best interest at heart, when the reality is deep down inside, he could care less. He's cold, he's callous, and many of his decisions are impulsive and ruthless. That's what I'm looking for. So these kind of individuals, according to research, they are not going to get treatment. So you can't look for your sibling to go to therapy. And if they do go to therapy, there's an undercurrent reason as to why they are going to therapy. Let me jump into the impact on you, okay, guys? And then I'm going to go back to the chat box briefly, and we're going to wrap up. I feel like this was such a long live chat, or is it just me? I don't know. So what does this impact on you? I already said it earlier. You're going to feel burdened. You're going to feel burdened by that sibling's legal issues, burdened by that sibling's divorce proceedings, burdened by that sibling's child custody issues, burdened by that sibling's irresponsibility, getting drunk and driving, constantly partying, constantly going to the bar and getting in trouble, hiding things from you, manipulating you, coming across as the favorite child, right? Swooping in like the hero and the rescuer, within your family, pushing the buttons on mom and dad and getting everything that they want when they want it, right? So you are going to feel burdened. A sociopathic, psychopathic, antisocial sibling is like a weight on your shoulders, right? You're also going to feel constantly provoked. I know you guys are relating to this one. You're going to feel constantly provoked. Why? They know your buttons, right? Siblings know your buttons better than anybody else. So they're going to step on that button, step on that button. And when you're not looking, they're going to step on that one over there too. And you're going to explode and get upset. And guess what they're going to do as an antisocial personality or a sociopath? They're going to say, how dare you have that kind of reaction? I didn't do anything to you. And if you have family members around them, your family members may be saying to you, what's wrong with you? Why are you acting this way? And you may say, because she's always doing undercurrent things. She's always doing things to push my buttons. Mom, dad, don't you see this? And your sibling may say, we are not going to buy into this right now. Hey, mom and dad, why don't we go over here? And then guess what she's looking like? She's looking like she's the innocent one. She's making you look like you're the one who just blows up, right? So you're going to be provoked. They're going to burden you. They're also going to be envious and jealous of you. That's another impact of having these kind of siblings, you know? And that envy and jealousy pushes them to want to get you in trouble at work, cause your husband not to be married to you still, right? He's going to want a divorce once she lies on you. Or your wife is not going to want to have anything to do with you when your sociopath brother gets through telling your wife what you used to do in your old times, right? Before you grew up and came around. So, you know, jealousy and envy is something that is not just a little bit of competition. It's not a little bit of, okay, you look better than me, or you're smarter than me, or you have more than me. No, a sociopath, a psychopath, an antisocial personality who is a sibling who is jealous and envious, they really try to get rid of you, whether that's minimize your impact on your family or your influence, push you to the side by gossiping about you, right? Try to get you fired, try to get mom and dad to see you a way that you're not. They do a lot of ugly things, right? Triangulation and manipulation. I don't need to go over that. You guys know what it is. Abuse. Okay, that's another one. Let me break this down a little bit. The sociopath and psychopath sibling can abuse you in more ways than just one. You know, sexual abuse often happens at the hands of a sociopath sibling. Physical and emotional, verbal, did I say psychological abuse, can all happen at the hands of a sibling. And if that sibling is a sociopath and a psychopath and is parentified, or there's adultification involved, that's a real tragedy, right? Because that sibling who's antisocial, who's a sociopath or a psychopath, They're over you, right? You're here and they're doing the raising. They're doing the helping you get things done for school. They're doing the, going to go get a job to earn money. They're the ones who are stepping into the shoes of your permissive, absent parent. And that can be nothing but a nightmare. I had a client 5 years ago, no longer a client. Case was horrendous. I had to literally unravel myself from the issues that was in that particular case, because the 7-year-old was being raised by the antisocial sibling. And what that led to was every day after school, that antisocial sibling, 17 years of age, would sexually violate his 7-year-old sister. And how did he do that? Mom was always at work. He was the parentified child, and he abused her for many, many years. And when she told mom and dad, this is what happened, here's what happened to me, this is, what my brother did, mom and dad said, there's absolutely no way. And the 17-year-old was much smarter than mom and dad, so he knew exactly what to say to get them to doubt the 7-year-old. It was really a tragedy of a traumatic case, if you will. But abuse is the number one thing as well. These kind of siblings will abuse you, and they don't have any conscience. They also really become, over time, the product of favoritism. So you kind of get pushed out of the way. They get all the favoritism, they get all the attention, and their life ends up a lot better than yours because of that. And they will drive that point home for as long as they have to. There's also competition at all costs. We're not talking just, I want to win this game of Uno, because I get like that with some of my kids in therapy. Let me tell you, sometimes the kids that I have, they have such sad lives, some of them, and complicated lives. I'll say, you want to play a game this session? And they'll say, yeah, what do you have? And I open up my closet and I show them, and they're like, wow, this is Toys R Us. And sometimes if I have a really smart kid, he'll say, can we play Uno? And I'm like, yes, we can, because that's the only game that I can win. And we sit down and we play Uno. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll just play around with my kiddos that come see me for therapy, and I'll steal a card when they're not looking, or I'll mix up my cards, or I'll act like I dropped a card and pick up more cards than I should have, and it gets them laughing, right? So there's a little bit of competitiveness in there. There's a little bit of joking. There's a little bit of fun and joy in that. Sociopaths and psychopaths aren't like that. They're not going to joke with you. They're not going to be a little bit competitive. They are going to gamble, right? This is not a normal game of Uno. We're going to gamble, and I'm going to put $100 that I'm going to win, right? Or they don't even like Uno. Maybe they'll go to, chess, and they'll just run circles around you, right? I'm trying to think of another competitive way that these kind of siblings are. They will compete for a role at work. They know you've been really wanting this job, but they also know that they have what it takes to get the job as well. So they're going to compete with you, and they may get the job and then look at you and say, I'm so sorry you didn't get that job, but I thought I was the best one for it. They have these really Machiavellian, sadistic kind of edges to them, and their competitiveness sometimes is a part of who they are. And they act out in evil and devious ways. Guys, this is a lot. I'm going to pause here because I'm way over time. What do you think of this topic? Do you feel like you have a sibling that is an antisocial personality? Do you feel like you have a sibling who's a sociopath, a psychopath? It's a complicated constellation of maladaptive symptoms. I'm going to repeat that again, just so you can take this home. It's a constellation. Think about the constellation of the stars. It's many. So it's a constellation of maladaptive behaviors with these siblings. And you're not going to get just 5 or 6 behaviors. You're not going to get just 7 or 8. You're going to get a whole smorgasbord full of characters, personalities, mindsets, behaviors, right? And that's because they are a lot. Sometimes I'll say to people who come in for therapy, I'll say to them, your mom's a lot. Or sometimes a client will say, my sibling did A, B, and C. And I'll say, yeah, because they are a job, right? And so are sociopaths and psychopaths. Also, what I want you to take away from this conversation tonight, before I go back to the chat box, is the differences here. Keep in mind, antisocial personality is the clinical diagnosis. You have to have 3 or more of those symptoms that I talked about tonight. You may want to go back and view that. But outside of the clinical lens, you have a series of behaviors that doesn't meet clinical criteria 100%. And because a sociopath and a psychopath is not going to get treatment, they may never get diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. So because of that, you're looking at 2 outside categorizations that are used incorrectly, that are used interchangeably, that mean 2 different things: a sociopath and a psychopath. All right, guys, let me just go back to the chat box. Hello, Don Juan. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. We're going to wrap up here in just a little bit. Let me scroll through here and see who's all on here. I also noticed that somebody had a super chat. Let me go back to you because you deserve my attention. Cornbread, thank you very much for the super chat. I appreciate you for that. Well, what you're saying is a good point. I don't know, he wouldn't be. Let me look at this first before I say anything. Clarence Thomas was bullied during the peak of lynching as a boy. Yeah. Kids killed him. Yep. America's Blackest Child. He was also locked in closets for hours. Yep, he was. The wake of an abusive childhood can affect others in society later. It very much can. It very much can. We can't necessarily say, though, Cornbread, that those 2 things are associated, right? Unless there's a therapist or a psychiatrist who has done some kind of work on the inside of his home, right? And his mind and his experiences. But I would not, I would not feel uncomfortable saying that there could be a connection between the 2, because an antisocial personality disorder often is born from genes and environment, right? And so, if his environment was that and he was born with a particular set of genes, it is possible. Breezy, thank you for the continued memberships. You gifted 5 people. I think that's so lovely and so sweet. So thank you for that. Jessica J, is Jessica J with us tonight? I feel like these are old. No, these are good, I think. Jessica J says, so sorry that I've missed some lives. I've had a death in my family this week. I lost my last living aunt. Have missed you all. Oh my. Jessica J, firstly, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate you. And I'm so sorry for your loss, especially if it's the last person in your family. I'll share this with you briefly just so that you do not feel alone. Let me say my family has recently gone through a series of deaths and losses. And I think that's kind of what led to my mom's stroke. Her blood pressure was so high. My grandfather died in, I believe, December of 2024. And then my aunt died, who was like a mother to my mom, 2 months after that. And then my mom also got word that a best friend died as well. And so it's like, oh my God, how can my heart and my mind deal with this constant loss, So Jessica J, I'm sorry to hear that. I know it can be very, very difficult and very slippery of a slope, right? So you have my attention. I will be praying for you for sure, because you need something that's far above you when you feel stuck like that in a situation where you just want that person back, right? Tammy Nicely, I had a comment of yours and I lost it, but I'm going to read this. You say it's those dark triad traits again. Yeah. Dark triad traits can definitely be a part of the equation here. Okay, let me keep going, guys. Angela Nicoletti says, I thank God for waking me up to this. Yes. Isn't that wonderful? Yep. I agree. Force of living. Hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. Rolando DD says, shame has always been my preferred method of dealing with them. Well, if it works, I don't see why not. Phoenix says, "Wow, I know I was married to a narcissist, but staying to think they were also borderline psychopathic. I'm finally not scared of them anymore. I went no contact, but they're still trying to contact me." Wow, that's hard, Phoenix. I'm sorry. HSR 1986. Hello and welcome, my friend. Haven't seen you in so long. Good to see you. Anaphylaxis. Good to see you as well. Welcome. Angela Nicoletti says, Tamara, yes, the antisocial will act out at some point. Run. Exactly. They're like a ticking time bomb, right? Ronnie Thomas. Hello and welcome. Good to see you. We're going to wrap up here in literally a second or two. Ronnie Thomas says, is there any help for us all? We all can have a little this hiding in the back of our minds. This is very scary. Okay. Is there any help for us all? We all can have a little this, I think you meant a little of this hiding in the back of our minds. This is very scary. It is very scary. I'm not sure if you're asking, is there help for you if you think that you are this, or if you're asking if there's help for you as a victim of it. So please post that question in the comment section once we sign off, because I will answer that. I will answer that for sure. I just don't want to answer it in the wrong way. Oh, awesome. Good. That's awesome, Rolando. And thank you for that. Yeah, I'm so glad to have you. Okay, let me keep going. Joe, hello. Hi. I haven't seen you in a while too. Where have you been, Joe? Good to see you. Joe says, my sis and I go through a cycle of her being really controlling and manipulative, and then it going quiet, and then it'll go right. It'll go all right for a bit, but only because of parents being ill and then going off. Yeah, totally. It's that roller coaster, right? Which category do you think that roller coaster personality comes from? Antisocial, sociopath, psychopath. That roller coaster disposition. Which category do you think that is? Okay, come on, guys. I'm testing you here. I gave you the material and now I'm testing you. It would be a sociopath. Okay, here's why. Remember, the sociopath doesn't respect social norms. They tend to be clumsy, right? They tend to have no long-term plans, so they're very disjointed. There's no focus on goals. There's no focus on structure. There's none of that. They're just floating around in the world, right? They tend to be emotional. They're constantly unstable. They're into legal trouble sometimes. There's no guilt or remorse, right? So sociopath for sure. Okay, Gary Bennett, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. Gary says, most definitely those that plan the downfall of others are evil. Some of it's cultural. I think so. I think so. Totally think so. Michelle Lynn says, I wonder if P. Diddy is a psychopath. Hey, I wouldn't put it past it. I really wouldn't. Anybody with an ugly soul like that? Yeah, probably. Force of Living says, my husband is a closet sociopath, and I didn't even put everything together about him until trying to figure out why my youngest daughter was giving me so many red flags, sociopathic personality traits. Oh, yeah. Sometimes it does come through in the kids, right? Momtude, hello. Good to see you tonight. We're going to wrap up here in a second. Mustang Black, hello and welcome. Good to see you tonight and welcome to the channel. Okay. Danita Miner says they were also extreme. Yes, they are. Ponytail. Anytime I see that name, I get so excited. Ponytail, cornbread, lemon squeeze, and I can't think of the other one. I love them. I really do. Ponytail says evil. That sums it up. I agree. Okay. Here we go. M.N. Odell was going to wrap up. Hello and welcome. Good to see you. M.N. Odell says, M.N.L. Odell says, they haven't got a conscience. You have to frame everything as what will profit them. That's so true. That's so true. You should give me a raise. You know why you should give me a raise? Your boss may say why or how. Why would I give you a raise? Because you know I'm the best worker here. I'm a hard worker. I live down the street. I can be here in no time. You're going to have little work to do. I can also make your breakfast in the morning and your coffee, because being the CEO of this company is going to help you make the money that you want, get the breakfast that you want. I'm going to go ahead and get you some coffee throughout the day. Right, guys? Like, you really do. You're right, MNL Odell. You do have to frame things in a way that kind of benefits them. And I've seen it. I've seen it more in the workplace, though, but I've seen it. Yeah, you're right. That was a good one. Okay. Clarissa Torres, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. Guys, I really need to be signing off here. Din Woke, hello and welcome. Good to see you tonight. Always glad to see you. Judy Paul, hello and welcome. Good to see you as well. Okay. One last one, and I promise I'm going to sign off. Helene Webster, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. It sounds like your former attorney. Yeah. Sometimes they can be pretty iffy, let me tell you. Guys, this was a long conversation tonight. I'm so sorry I kept you on here for so long. I feel like this was over an hour. Good to see you, though, and thank you for being with me in tonight's live chat. I hope this was helpful. I hope you can walk away now being knowledgeable about what antisocial personality disorder is, sociopathy, and psychopathy. And you can now go out into the world and say, okay, I clearly know what the differences are. So hopefully you were able to do that. I love you guys so much. Thank you for the super chats tonight, the support of each other. I see you guys supporting each other in the chat box. I just love you. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful night, guys. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.